He was on the news today. Yeah. I'm going to start. You know what? Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you this night to our American Forks City Council. We're meeting in regular session on this June 12th of 2018. It's nice to see the chambers full and have people here to participate with us, and we welcome you. Our agenda has been posted on the state website and various places throughout the city, and we will follow the agenda as outlined. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, in which I will lead, and then it'll be followed by a prayer by Council Member Shelton, and then after which I will conduct the roll call. If everybody please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful for the opportunity that we have to be gathered together as a community. Father, we're grateful for the wonderful country that we live in, for the opportunity that is ours to participate in being able to govern ourselves. We're thankful, Father, for the many sacrifices that have been made to be able to secure our freedom and to be able to protect us from the threats that exist in the world. Father, we're thankful for the city employees, for their dedicated service and their hard work. We're grateful for the trust of the residents who have graciously chosen us to represent them in various matters. We ask, Father, that thy Spirit will be upon us this evening, that we may be able to have open minds and open hearts. We pray that we may be able to be enlightened and be guided by thy hand. And these things we ask and pray for in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I'll now conduct the roll call. Councilmember Christiansen.
Here.
Councilmember Shelton.
Here.
Councilmember Barnes.
Here.
Councilmember Carroll.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Here.
We have a full council tonight and can conduct the business of this city. Second on our agenda, I think that's what most of this audience is for, and we appreciate you being here and rightfully should be here in support of something wonderful. We have I would call it a new tradition in our ward where we like to honor people that have done special in our city. Excuse me. Once in a while I go back and forth. So in our city that have done things that are special. I would call them above and beyond what you normally see. And in the case tonight, this individual, through their leadership and action, brought a great spirit of love to our community and surrounding communities, was able to help serve a family, and then on the way, again, helped us rise to greater heights of being able to feel love for one another and to serve and to be a participant in that. And it took a lot of people. So I'm going to ask, I won't call him Mr. Jeff Schoonover if he'd come forward at this time. turn this around and I'm going to read this. This is a resolution recognizing Jeff Schoonover as an American Fork hero for his dedication, commitment, and leadership in serving youth and families in the community. Now, I know this. I know that he did not expect this. And this had nothing to do with the decisions that he made. This was a decision that was made amongst our staff and our city council as we talked about it, and we felt like it was this was something that we needed to recognize. So, whereas American Fork City wishes to recognize members of the community who demonstrate outstanding determination, selfless service, and heroic efforts, and whereas Jeff Schoonover is the American Fork Junior High principal since 2014 and is a community council member and recognized a service opportunity on behalf of Kevin Belargen and his family for a wheelchair-accessible van. And whereas Jeff Schoonover was instrumental in bringing together students, various businesses and organizations, and the entire community to raise the funds necessary for the purchase of a specialized van through various activities such as penny wars, car washes, and carnivals. And whereas the efforts of Jeff Schoonover resulted in a wheelchair-accessible van that met the needs of Kevin Belargen and his family, as well as other amenities and funding for future education for Kevin. And whereas Jeff Schoonover exemplifies the traits and attributes of a community hero that inspires others in our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Mayor and City Council of American Fork, on behalf of all residents, to hereby recognize and proclaim Jeff Schoonover as an American Fork hero, and declares June 12, 2018 to be recognized as Jeff Schoonover Day in American Fork City, Utah. Can I have a motion by the council?
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Shelton and a second by Councilmember Tater. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. So what we'd like to say, we have a plaque that has names on it. His name is being engraved this week, and that plaque is going to be displayed. We're going to display it either in this hall or the hall of the administration building. We feel like more people see it over there, but in here it's a little more significant in his historical setting. And so, again, thank you to Jeff Schoonover.
Okay. Thank you so much. I just want to, first of all, thank my family for being here tonight. I really love all of them and appreciate their support. And I'm thankful for my assistant principals also and their families being here. They were all waiting to go up to Park City, and their support, they were very instrumental in this as well. So I just appreciate their time and effort. They should be up here as well. So especially thankful for my wife and all she does and puts up with me. So and she knows I love her. So and my children are here, and thank you. And McCoy left a baseball game to come here, so you know how important this is. So, but just a neat opportunity to help our student. I want to thank the city to have a mayor, a police chief, and a fire chief come and do what they did that day and have the police cars and fire trucks. It was unbelievable, and just your support. The city came and they raised money as well. They did a car wash and they helped in every way. So thank you. Our whole community came together. We were able to raise about $90,000 for this young man. So we'll help him with that van and some future scholarships and different things for his life. So our students, the best part was to see them giving back. And really, this should be maybe Kevin Belargen Day, but I thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, I wish we could just end the meeting on this note right here and how we feel. Item number 3 is public comment period. We invite anybody to come forward this time if they'd like to address the mayor, the city council, and the senior staff. If there's an item on the agenda that you would rather wait for, just please raise your hand. We want to hear your voice. Right now, if there's something at general that you'd like to come and address us, please come to the mic at this time. Well, last call for public comment. Seeing none, we will move on to the city administrator report.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one item to report, and tonight on our agenda we'll be talking about the 2018 fireworks restrictions, and it's a really dry year out there. And I just want to let you know I received a call from some representatives in Cedar Hills who they just finished their city days, and it ended with a pretty large fire during their fireworks celebration on Saturday night. And I got a call just saying, hey, thank you for American Fork Fire and Police that helped out with everything to do with their city days and also that event, that firework event. They finished off their grand finale Monday night, last night, and there were no further fires, thank goodness. But again, our fire department showed up to make sure, and just want to pass on the appreciation from them to our fire and police department. So thank you.
Thank you for that report. Councilmember Chris Jansen.
Okay, the Timpanogos, it's working. The Timpanogos Arts Foundation, sorry, it didn't sound like it, is preparing, we've got a new director, a new president, in addition to the executive director. And they're preparing for the Americana Arts and Music Festival that will be held in September. It's going to be up by the amphitheater and in surrounding areas. And they're looking for people who would be interested in participating, want to tell the families and community residents to be sure to put that on their calendars. But anyone who's interested in participating, there are going to be booth rentals at a reduced rate. And just to let people know that there's going to be places for people to display their own artwork, not something that they're selling that somebody else created, but things that local people around this area have done. We've got a great community and we want to be able to showcase those. For the other part of my report, I'd like to turn my time over to the Library Board Chair, Heidi Rodeback.
Nice to see a familiar face.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Council and Mayor. I'm really happy to be here. It's budget season, and Barbara asked me to come and speak on behalf of the library, tell you some of the things that we're up to. And we are seeing some good things happen at the library, really encouraged by the work of our reference librarian, Christian Weaver, our juvenile librarian, Aaron Waugh, and we have a new library director, and we are looking for good things to happen. You've heard me say this before, but I have to give you this piece of my stump speech, that the library is such an integral part of our community. This goes all the way back to Benjamin Franklin, who believed that education was not just the province of the privileged few, but it needed to go to everybody. And we know in our community that our library plays a vital role in our economic development when we are trying to attract businesses, especially tech businesses from out of town. They will only bring their families to a community that has a good quality of life, and the library is central to that. On the flip side of that, when we go through recessions, it's the library that educates and retools the workforce. And the irony that we face as a library is that when our people need the library the most is when we start to cut library funding. And we're on good times right now, and so it really is time to start stocking the granary like Joseph of Egypt, and to be thinking about our needs as a library. Our budget this year proposes very modest increases. We have asked for 2 additional part-time staff members and for a 3% inflationary adjustment to the collection budget. The collection is the holdings of the library, the books and the electronic materials and the other media that we hold. And that is certainly far below our needs, but we're mindful of the many other needs that we're competing with in the community. We know that our quality of life depends as much on our parks and our public safety and our roads and our arts as anything else. And we know that you've been swamped, especially with road maintenance. And we've been respectful of that. But we also know that we will soon be retiring the bond that built the library, and that we are in good times right now. And so I really want to plead with you to remember the library. Here's something to keep in mind. We meet the benchmarks to certify as a library. We do certify. But we do not meet benchmarks to certify as a quality library, and I think that's a big problem. We spend about half what our neighboring communities do on our collections, and the difference is made up in donations. The benchmarks we do meet to become a quality library are circulation. Our patrons do come to the library and use it and show their support of it. Where we don't meet the benchmarks are in our programming. The educational programs we're able to offer to the community. And that's a function of being understaffed. We just don't have the staff to offer extensive programming. We fail in attendance programming. Of course, that's pursuant to that. And then we fail in the collection budgets. Actually, the electronic collection budgets is right up to the benchmarks, but all the others are failing. And that's just what I'm telling you. We spend half of what Pleasant Grove spends. We spend half of what Lehigh spends on books. We do run a beautiful facility, but we're not getting down to the books, which is our purpose. So let me just wrap up with an anecdote and just tell you what that means to me. Do we have books on our shelves? Yes. I went to the library earlier this month in search of books on Carl Jung. My therapist sent me there. I am on the upswing, coming out of anxiety and depression, and he said, it's time for a little education for you now. He said, you need to know more about Carl Jung. So I went to the library, and I found in the stacks a nice big section on personal psychology. And it was fascinating. I started to look at the titles, and finally I just sank to the floor and started pulling books off the shelf and going through them. And I will tell you, this is a remarkable thing that happened, because the last time I sank to the floor in a library, I was in Orem. It was certainly not in American Fork. When I first moved to American Fork, you could go from personal finance to gardening to home economics to child psychology in one shelf. And so to be able to just sit down and go through a wealth of books on this subject was really something. I picked out this book, 6 Archetypes We Live By, The Hero Within, and it derives from Jungian psychology. And I started to find myself in the pages, and the archetype they wanted to assign to me was martyr. And I thought, that's not really fair. I'm proud of myself as a mother. And I don't like to be called a loser, such as a martyr. And so I went to the internet for help. And there I found that this book has actually been through several reprints in the last 30 years. My copyright here is actually 1986. And research in the last 30 years has expanded these 6 archetypes to 11, and they have reworked mine, and I am now a nurturer. And I'm proud of that designation. But I thought, here we are relying on a 30-year-old book that was probably donated, and we really ought to be up to date. So that's kind of what we're looking at in our collections. We've come a long way in 20 years, but we still have farther to go, and it all comes down to budget. So it's a very modest, very defensible increase we've asked for this year. But I hope you'll keep us in mind moving forward, because we need to start upping our game after this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Can I say one more word?
Absolutely.
Well, a couple more. Every time my husband and I go on a trip somewhere, we're driving through a little town or a bigger town or whatever, he said, "Would you like to live here?" And I say, "I'd have to see the library first." It's an important, very important part. We sometimes take it for granted because we think, oh, it's a library. Yes, we have one. But we need to have that quality library. We need to have the resources for our residents that will help them throughout their lives.
Okay. Thank you for that report from both of you. Appreciate it. Councilmember Shelton.
Thanks, Mayor. Just to report back on the dispatch, got a chance to talk with our legal counsel. They're working on the agreements with the district/local interlocal agreement. Is that right, Tim, how we're wording that? And we should have that to the council within the next month, I would say.
I haven't seen the final draft yet.
Okay.
When you receive it, we'll bring it in front of you.
Awesome. So that's how we're reorganizing as a district. Be good to take a look at that. I know Tim's been working with Junior, who's the attorney there for the district, so we should get that here shortly. Other than that, on the beautification note and on neighborhood preservation, those sometimes can go hand in hand together, came across a really great Facebook post that I thought would be wonderful for everyone to take a look at. There's a very knowledgeable man by the name of Jay Allen that's in our city, and he is the biggest green thumb I know of in the city. And he did a 6-part series on his Facebook page about lawn care. And it fascinated me how inexpensive it is to be able to keep your lawn up, and you don't have to buy all the, I hate to use a brand name, but ortho products or things of that nature. You can do it on a very tight budget, and he also goes through the watering and how to be able to conserve water. So I would just encourage anyone on that side of things as we're looking to beautify the city and also neighborhood preservation, go watch those videos. I learned a lot in that little bit that I need to change my habits. So that's all, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Barnes.
Thank you, Mayor. Two things I wanted to report on. The first one, just because it happened first, was the Memorial Day program. It seems like it's been longer than a couple of weeks, but it was just a couple of weeks ago yesterday. We had a wonderful program. We filled the junior high auditorium. Our literally world-famous marching band was there, and we had a wonderful speaker in Ray Garrett. We had a good crowd. Pretty well filled the place up, and a good way to celebrate and remember and honor those who have served. And we had a group come sing who are go by the name of the Timpanogos Chorale. They are wonderful. We were going to try, and they were trying to line them up for next summer for the same thing, but they're going to be singing, I think it was at Carnegie Hall or someplace like that under a special invitation. That's how good they are, and they just did a wonderful job. And the community supports that, and it's good that we remember those things. And then last night I was able to go up to, excuse me, up to Quell Cove and heard the chorale again. They were there along with a fairly new group, the Wasatch Show Band. This is a new group that was literally organized, they told me 8 or 9 months ago. John Miller put it together, about 20 people in the group, and the two of them put on a really good program that lasted almost 2 hours. And that is such a fun place to sit in that amphitheater. And yes, if you go, be sure and take some padding because those rocks do get hard after 2 hours. But it is such a beautiful environment. They will be there every Monday night for about 6 or 7 more weeks, I think. I looked at the schedule earlier, but I didn't count them. Every Monday night, a free entertainment night. Different groups will be there. You can look it up on the city website and see which groups will be there and choose the ones you want to go to. But it's a wonderful way to spend an evening with friends and neighbors. And that Arts Council does a really good job in doing that. And part of the money that came through the park tax, PAR with a C tax program, helped set up and get some of the instruments and stuff ready for this new band. So it's that money is being used, and it shows in the community, and it, in my opinion, is doing what it's supposed to, in that it's adding to the quality of the life that we have here. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Councilmember Carroll.
Yeah, Mayor, I was going to report about Still Days. Still Days is going to start in about 1 month from today. So be on your toes watching for that. They are looking for volunteers. If any of you know of anybody that would be willing to volunteer, especially to help us the morning of the parade, that would be fantastic. We have had a couple of meetings over the past 2 weeks, and I know that the Chamber of Commerce, who is in charge of Still Days this year, they've been meeting almost daily, and they're doing a great job, and I have really high hopes that they're going to have all of their T's crossed and I's dotted. The Chamber's been keeping me busy in other ways too. They've had 3 ribbon cuttings in the last 2 weeks. I went to 2 of them. I'll let the mayor talk about the one. But one of them that I went to was for Voyage Direct Primary Care, and they are it's a DO, so not an MD, but a doctor who has a different model for giving patient care. It was really interesting, where you had a subscription service, pretty much, where you would pay a monthly fee and you could go as much as you wanted, and it didn't matter if you had insurance or not. So it was a different model for people that might be beneficial for some. I was going to talk about the concert series. The Chamber of Commerce is helping us with that in conjunction with their help with Still Days. And the first week they had Joshua Creek, and as Kevin mentioned, they had the Wasatch Show Band and the Timpanogos Chorale last week, and then every Monday night at 7 they'll have those. And I also forgot to report last meeting that I was able to attend the Utah Valley Chamber Summit. That came about after a series of conversations, so I decided to go. And if any of you are interested in details of that, I can pass those along. Oh, and that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Taylor.
Just a quick note, I participated in the Memorial Day program as well, and I just echo what Kevin said, and I won't go into that. But the other wonderful tradition that our family has is, visiting our loved ones, and certainly not any kind of attempt to put any of the other cities down, but American Fork Cemetery clearly stood out. Green grass, just, the amenities there. They brought in portable restrooms now, which was always kind of an issue in the past, and it was beautiful, and it was done so well, and it was very appropriate that Ray would be our Memorial Day speaker because of the number of years that he's been there and the number of years of service he's provided to people outside of our city as well as the citizens. But I just really applaud some of those things go unnoticed. We concentrate on a lot of things, but the beauty of our cemetery for Memorial Day, and all the time, and along with the children's park or the children's garden that we have there, it's a wonderful place. And so I just wanted to tell the staff how much I appreciated the beauty of the cemetery and all of the hard work and effort that had gone into that to bring comfort and peace to so many who would come and visit loved ones there. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. If I could just maybe tag on to that as well, to prepare that cemetery for such a big event, many people participated outside of the cemetery. I mean, I know Derek was out there, David was out there, Camden, so it really was a team effort in making the preparations for the grounds for that, and that weekend, and then of course throughout the whole week while the flowers are displayed. And I appreciate it as well. That was a wonderful day in our city. I think American Fork City really does a good job at reflecting the community values and honoring all those who have gone before us, and especially those in the military. We name their names one by one, those who have given the ultimate sacrifice. And that program was, I would call it a spiritual event. It was something sacred to be a part of and to be there and participate in. And then few were there, but it was likewise, and just how special of an event it was. It was the first time we've tried this, and we'll see if we do it next year. There was a gentleman in our city who wanted to show the proper way to retire a flag, and so he solicited the VFW, and they came and they actually ended up folding the flag and going through the instructions. And they had a little fire there, and they burned it. We had a moment of silence, and it was a very reverent and sacred experience to watch these good veterans retire a flag, and it's something I won't forget. And so I really appreciate the city and all the efforts that go into making Memorial Day special. It's a day that in our family is very traditional, and we feel a part of our community. My daughter said after the breakfast, she says, "Dad, it makes me feel like something's smaller." That was just her way of feeling it. Maybe she thinks AF gets big, but when she goes to the fireman's breakfast and we're talking and people are coming up to you and people you know, your neighbors and your friends, she just felt like our AF felt a little bit smaller. So I participated in the ribbon cutting as well, and I think it's AIM Arena. Is that how they pronounce it? It's a Nerf gun arena, unlike anything I have participated in before. We had a few wars. Councilmember Carol and her kids and myself took on a few of the administrative staff and others, and we kind of prevailed over them 2-3 in a game, and came away smelling well, just sweaty, and it was a fun event. But that's down there in the old Covenant Communications buildings next to Tabitha's Way. This company has invested money to bring us something that they think is not here, and I don't know if there's another one like it in American Fork. And we had a lot of fun. I encouraged my sons to take a date down there, and they could have fun. And so that is the mayor's report. We will now move on to the common consent agenda. It consists of 2 items: approval of the May 15th, 2018 work session minutes, and approval of the May 22nd, 2018 City Council minutes. Is there any corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve, Mayor.
Motion by Councilmember Shelton. Seconded by Councilmember Carroll. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor. Okay, common consent approves. We'll now move on to the action items. Item number 1 is ratification of city payments from May 15th, 2018 to June 5th, 2018, and approval of purchase requests over $25,000. Have a motion by Councilmember Taylor,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor. Aye. All right. Item number 3, review and action on an engineering service agreement. 2. Review and action on an ordinance approving a zone map amendment from the R4 7500 residential to the CC1 Central Commercial Zone located at 34 West, 100 North. Adam, could you just kind of just give us a brief synopsis of this? And then I know that there's people here that want to speak about this.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this application for zone change, it's actually for the northern portion of the property. You can see on the map that the southern portion is zoned CC1, which is a commercial zone. They're looking to have the remainder put into the same commercial zone. There's a potential use for that property, but they would like it all in one zone. It makes it easier for financing purposes when the property's in one zone as opposed to 2. The Planning Commission they discussed it back and forth, and any future use on this commercial use will need to come back before them as a site plan approval. And so they'll have opportunity to make comment at that time, but they ultimately recommended approval of the zone change.
Is there Is there any questions for Adam? I know we have a few people here that would like to speak about this as well. Okay, thank you, Adam. We'll invite you up if you'd come forward and please state your name for the public record.
Hi, my name is Seth Dixon. I live at the property at 86 West and 100 North. It goes back pretty deep, and then I actually have the lot that goes east towards the property in question here. And I heard about this from a neighbor, which was, a little weird for me. I would hope that when a change like this is being made, that the city would reach out and talk to residents. I read through the minutes, and it sounded like the people trying to make this change said that they had went around and talked to neighbors. I've lived here for almost a year, and I never heard from anyone. I'm not opposed to businesses, but I have some big plans for my property. I'd really love to turn that back area into a nice lawn where my family can play and kids can run around. And the idea of 80 dogs being one property over, it's a little more than just neighborhood dogs in the distance. And that would really be a little worrisome for me. So I'm kind of just wondering what the options are for that. Is there a way to restrict the types of businesses that can move into that area? I know it's a mixed, commercial and residential area, but it's still a residential area, and I think that still needs to take priority at the end of the day. So.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Annie Magnuson. I own the property at 64 West 100 North, and I completely agree with what he was saying. It is a residential area, and the idea of having a dog kennel or a boarding facility or anything like that where you've got multiple dogs barking at any hour of the day when you might have babies trying to sleep or families trying to gather outside, it's a little bit hard. And we use our home as a rental property, there's no way to rent that out when you're showing it during the day at the time when you've got multiple animals, and they can't, nobody's going to want to rent that that home then when they can't be outside without having dog barking and all of that. I agree with what he was saying. I have no problems with businesses being around there. I know that it's a mixed area, and if we could, I don't know, if we could restrict or at least be aware that there's homes there, and just put the type of businesses in that are appropriate to be around families and other things so that, we can all coexist nicely. That would be wonderful. And I know my brother-in-law, who couldn't be here today because he's, You're here? Okay. My mother-in-law is here for him, so. Did I need to say anything more, or do you want to? If you're ready, okay. I'm sorry?
That won't be the situation.
Let's hear from let's hear from her first, and I'll take you next after that. All right.
I'm Sharon Magnuson, representing John Magnuson. He owns 62 West 100 on Pacific, a twin home. I think most of you know where that is. At some point, they do hope to have this go commercial, and the building is structured accordingly. But the limited use is the big issue. A kennel or a dog facility probably ought not to be in the center of a residential area. There are better places, and in most towns you won't find them in a residential area, and part of that is the barking. Even if, I know I read the thing that said, well, there won't be barking and they're not going to have overnight. There will be, and it will be, and once it starts, there's no stopping, there's no controls. We want to keep it residential or quiet and let them take a dog kennel somewhere that's more accommodating to the noise without bothering people who are quietly enjoying their time on Earth. And so we're okay with commercial. We're just not okay. We want it restricted commercial. So that office buildings, things like that are fine. Just not animals, not a vet, not a dog care, that kind of thing. So that's kind of our request, and of course, we'll be back again, I guess, when they deal with that again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do agree with all the comments that have been made. And
Okay. Could you please state your name?
my name is Greg Lewis.
Okay.
I represent that property. It's my family property. When I asked for the zone change, it had nothing to do with the dog business coming in. I simply asked for the zone change. The party that wanted to purchase the property has since backed out of that idea because they knew that they had some dissent on this. So it's no longer going to be a worry for you. And I do.
like it restricted somewhat, so that
whoever
comes in next will understand.
Yes, and I agreed with it. I had nothing to do with who wanted to set up that type of business there.
We didn't get notification, none of us were notified that anything was going on. We found out from one person about it accidentally. We needed to be notified.
Yes, I think that they circulated throughout the neighborhood. Maybe they didn't catch everybody at home, but I had nothing to do with.
You know, something, in the middle of something somewhere.
But sure, I do approve of what they say. So, but that's the case now. We have other business interests that would fit well into that zone, and we just feel like dual zoning just does not serve well for that area, and neither did the dog type of business. So, we just hope that we I appreciate the Planning Commission for hearing this and approving of it. And I grew up in the city. I played ball here. I was just a little kid. All my fond memories are here in this town. And you know, and I was a member of the National Guard in American Fork, and I live in Linden now. But I just love American Fork. It's a beautiful city. I think that you as city officials and the administration is doing a terrific job. And I just hope that in any way that I can to clear anything up, any questions, I'd be happy to do so.
Any questions from the council?
I just had a couple, maybe more for Adam, if that's okay. As far as notification goes, is it still the policy of the Planning Commission to post a sign? Was that sign posted on the property? So it's hard to know. I remember years ago getting in discussion of where do you draw the line of who should be notified, and they felt like, well, if there was a sign on the property, well, we used to have a bigger sign than that. Maybe we can do better on that. But so the idea was if someone drove by and had an interest in a sign on a property, then they probably had an interest in the property. We've talked in the past about mailing people, and again, how do you do that radius? And as soon as you go one house out, that person's going to say, well, geez, how come I wasn't included in the mailing and things of that nature. The other thing I have in here is if we go to the CC1 zone in the code, and we scroll down to, let's see here, I had it. It talks about the noises and things of that nature, and it's in section D3. It says, no dust, odor, smoke, vibration, or intermittent light, glare, or noise shall be permitted to be discernible beyond the premises except for normal traffic movement. So their noise. Correct. So, well, and that's part of what we look at the site plan would be saying, okay, if we're going to put in here a dog, I hate to keep using that because I know it's not going to be that, and we know that there's going to be barking, that's probably not a good site plan to be able to approve. That makes sense? But the other thing I was looking at on here, more of that, is when you go in and you look in the code and it talks about the purpose of this zone, it was to allow the heart of the city to be able to be developed commercially. Is that a fair statement, Adam, when I looked at the intent of the zone? So typical lots would have a minimum width requirement and things of that nature. That doesn't exist on this property. But what it does say is it talks about the parking and the traffic movements. And that's a big concern I have on this property, is you have an extremely narrow driveway that goes back, and then you have a structure, I think it's a garage from what I can tell, that sits back behind the house, and then there's a big open field in the back. And so I wasn't sure how the parking movements were going to work, because I'd be very concerned with any traffic coming in on West Lane, because that is not even a lane that is to code, I think, Chief. I don't know if you could even get a fire truck down there, let alone turn it around or any emergency services back there. So when I look at that type of stuff, that's what I'm looking at and saying, how can we make sure our public safety can still be able to do what it needs to do? And I'm just not being able to see it. My heart's with you on this about the split zone. I don't know if the intent there was at some point that deep lot would be split on the backside and allow a home off of West Lane. That's the only thing I could ever think of, but who knows?
Well, over the years, my father and me too had requested from the city that we could build back in that vacant lot. And we was continually turned down for that idea. And yet the neighbor on the east side of us now has a home in back. I don't know how he pulled that off.
Yeah, I
but-
noticed. He doesn't even have any frontage. His front door looks like it's
but
a house
he-
behind a house.
Whether he did it with the city's approval, I don't know. But we were always turned down, and in my family, we've owned that property a lot longer than he's been there. That would have been a great value to us had we been able to build back there. And on a bigger piece of land as well. So I'm a little concerned about how some people are able to do things and other people aren't. We're just asking for the ability to have, hopefully have the best use of this property, which does fit into everybody's concerns. It's a business zoning. I had nothing to do with the dog idea, and I don't know why I'm forgetting his name now. I know him real well, but I'm forgetful. Who runs Bank of American Fork? Dale Gunther. He actually is the one who rented to the lady with the dog business. And so this is how it come about. He was selling his property, his building, and he needed them to move somewhere else. So they were desperate to find a suitable location for their dog kennel business. I don't know if it's more of a dog grooming or kennel, but it's going to be maybe both. Yeah, and they were trying to figure out how they could remedy that, and an idea that he and the real estate agent was to put in some kind of like a stadium, they called it. There was a stadium that they could buy for $50,000, and they thought that might solve the noise problem. But I really had nothing to do with someone coming to me to put up that kind of business. And I wasn't proposing that with the Planning Commission either. I was only asking for the zone change because that's how we see that property having its best use.
So as I take a look at it, because I want to be genuine, I hate to just say no and you go back scratching your head saying, what can I do with this property? I don't know, the width on that back lot, Adam, it's 56 feet, is that right? I'm just thinking from the county map I looked at, but it looks to be a pretty narrow lot on the back end there.
It's too narrow to legally split. If you create a new lot, it has to meet the standards, and it does not meet that. So any reviews we would do for a commercial site plan would happen then. We'd look at circulation and access, but again, we don't have a site plan to review, so it's hard to go into all of those details. But again, they're just asking for the zone change.
And I'm just trying to think 2 steps ahead. I hate to get your hopes up saying, yes, we're going to approve this, and then you come back and we can't decide a site plan, right? I think that's
The site
disingenuous.
plan in this zone would stop at planning commission, so we'd review it as staff and then take it to the planning commission. But yeah, it's.
But then it comes to
under-
council?
No, not in the CC1
Okay.
zone, it does not, it ends at the planning commission.
Well, then I'll make my comments now, but that's my biggest concern is how you're going to do that. If you look at the map up there, you got that narrow driveway, which I don't think you get 2 cars to bypass on that driveway. Be very, very difficult. And then you got that garage that's sitting there, so to do any parking on the back end, you'd have to have an S-curve that's built inside there. So that's the hard thing I have. Now, if we're willing to tear those buildings down and construct something on the back end and turn the front end into more of a parking lot, I can see something like that. But I'd have a lot of concern here, safety-wise, as you get 2 cars competing to go into that entrance. It's going to pile up traffic that's already piling up on Pacific Drive at the moment.
How wide is that entrance?
I didn't measure it, I'm just looking at the. Boy, I wish I did.
I'm thinking it's
About 15 feet. You talking that, just that
about
driveway?
15 wide.
Where are we talking about on this map? Somebody pointed
Somebody
out.
put a
It's right where that arrow's at.
That's the driveway.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's, okay. I just had some ideas and I was thinking.
So if you look to the one just to the west, you can see a road that probably has the proper width or something closer to where it needs to be. You can see the cars there and how much spacing that gives you. But I'm just thinking about it, if we had a fire back there, that's gonna be very difficult to be able to get to, given the current constraints
Well,
we have there.
no, I met with the fire marshal, and we walked over that and addressed that issue together. And he agreed with me that it's doable. And he did talk to me about the length of their homes and how it could be built on further back. If you built north and south, it might not work out so good. So anything that's approved, like any group storage building or anything like that, if it was built east and west, no problem. The fire marshal told me that he sees it as plenty doable.
And I think storage units might be a good option. They're actually not for condos.
Well, or office building. That's what we're more looking at. We're really not looking at something major in the back end. We're looking at the front part of the property as, in fact, we have interest for business use of the home and the attached shop and the other building right now that would cause no problem for anybody.
Okay.
But we need to be able to get the benefit of the value of the property. And when we had a neighbor that somehow got to build the value of his property and got away with putting a home in the backside, who passed that off? Or did he even apply for it? It was originally a business, now it's a home. And wow, he's got the same width of property as we do.
That's the one to the east of
Yes. And I would feel really disenfranchised if that's what happens.
Okay, any other questions, council? I think you've put a lot of people at ease knowing that there's not going to be 80 dogs.
We don't want any
And I
problems.
don't, that was what we've been reading in preparation for this. We've been reading the minutes of the planning commission.
Yeah.
And the dog park and the owners were really there to sell this to the planning commission.
Yeah,
And so,
I didn't know they was even coming. But Dale Gunther came to that meeting, and they had gone around and talked to several of the neighbors. In fact, the neighbors, a couple of them come to me and complained to me after the fact. I was in the early stages. I didn't even know the extent of everything, but
Do you have a record of the building that is there? In my understanding, like I say, we own right near it. My understanding was people that built that building that you're upset about, they never really got a permit. That was why I understood. Maybe we can check the history and see if they even got a permit legally. If they didn't, that building could be eliminated legally. Not that we want to.
he
but
told
it
me
is-
he was grandfathered in.
That's what I meant. I think
Because
they
I
thought
asked
they could
him.
just build that without permits.
Well, if he could do that, we should be able to build something in our back end.
Well, he shouldn't have. That's the reason I said we should check history and see what happened there.
well, we're taking notes here, believe me.
I
And
also
so,
think, again, I know I'm kind of butting in, but I'm trying to help out a little here. In real estate, a nice condo or office building back in there still would work. They could put the meter or the water, firemen look into it.
hydrant.
Hydrant, I'm sorry, getting old. They could put the hydrant further into the property so that the fire trucks can take hoses from the hydrant without having the larger trucks in there for water as far as fire control. And I think they're agreeable, they would work with us. But I think putting an office building, like you said, office to the side would be an excellent alternative for him.
Yeah, those are all things to be worked out. And the planning commission would be there. We would have technical review staff, our engineering department, planning department, that would vet that all out, make sure that it met proper codes for the protection of all, so.
Yeah.
So Mayor, I'm going to take a stab at a motion if that's
Okay.
okay. I'm going to make a motion to deny the zone map amendment based on section 144401C of our code. And I'll just read that real quick. It says there shall be no area width or location requirements for commercial buildings and structures constructed in accordance with the building code except that an area sufficient to accommodate parking, loading, unloading, and vehicular access shall be provided and maintained. I just don't think we've had that burden of proof given by the applicant at this point that we can be able to handle the traffic patterns inside there to handle it commercially.
I just have a comment on that. Maybe you can help me see. The front part is already commercial, it's already zoned commercial. So that issue seems like it would already be an issue in and of itself. And yet we're just giving him the back portion. Like there could already be traffic there.
So I guess the front half, yes, but even more so is worse is the back half, right? Because then you got to have that S-curve to get back to that back part of the property. So how are you going to utilize that back half of a property?
I'm sorry, an S-curve? What do you mean?
We don't know what's going in there.
Right, so the burden of proof is on the applicant to show us why it meets these codes and requirements. And according to this, it says that the applicant needs to be able to show that vehicular access, parking, and everything of that nature isn't an issue. And to me, I'm just one council member, but didn't see that burden's been met. So when you look at the, you have your mouse on it there, Evelyn, by chance? So you look at the driveway that comes in, and then you'd have to do an S-curve around that building right there, that garage. That's what I'm talking about. Or tear it down, absolutely. But I guess what I'm saying is we're looking at this back part right here, right? And I don't know how you're going to be able to get vehicular access to that back part to be able to utilize that back part as commercial.
I guess I'm also wondering, like, when we're talking about codes, we're talking about the building that's there, and they haven't submitted yet to have something that's up to code. Like, we're just giving them a zone change, asking for a zone change.
Right, and when you look at the code, I'm looking at the width requirements. So usually when you're looking at a zone change, let's say someone's looking to build a home and it's an R1000 zone, and they say you've got to have 100 feet of frontage to be able to get that lot, and they only have 80 feet. Well, they're not going to get that zone change. Just like Adam brought up on that back half, they're not going to get that zone change to split that because they don't meet the width requirements to get that lot split to get a zone change on it. So I guess I look at it and say, if we're going to put it in there, let's make sure that it's actually going to fit commercially. I hate to give his hopes up. He's going to go back and bang his head on the site plan. I'd just rather make sure we address that up front. That's my biggest concern here.
My concern, can I speak to that?
Will you please come to the mic, just because this is being live streamed,
Okay, thank you.
and you don't hear it unless you're into a mic. You don't hear comment.
If we are shut down on getting the zone changed, we can't put any kind of business in there. At this moment, we have an accounting business that wants to locate there. If we don't get that approval, even a business like that will be shut down. You just destroy the value of the property. I agree with it that if someone has a use that doesn't fit, then to shut that use down, but to shut down the rezoning of the property, it doesn't feel fair to us at all.
Adam, could you speak to, there wasn't a lot of detail in the planning commission report. I mean, there was 3 paragraphs that we've been through. So knowing what planning commission knows and turning, this forward, I know we were talking about a potential for some kind of pet habitat there. What was their logic then behind the affirmative approach to changing to a CC1 zone?
Because they could see that you can't split it off and make a residential use. It doesn't create a legal lot, and they felt that having a parcel under one zone as opposed to 2 made more sense. Additionally, we will get a site plan forward. We'll look at parking, we'll look at circulation, we'll look at fire access. That's all stuff that we review at the site plan stage, but under the zone change, if the zone is changed, it allows them to take that next step instead of bring us a site plan and not know if the zone would be changed. And so, again, the Planning Commission felt there was value in having the property as one zone as opposed to two, especially when the residential portion can't legally be built on anyway, because we can't create a lot that doesn't meet the requirements of the zone, which it does not. So.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. I'm going to call for a second. Okay, motion dies for lack of a second. Does
Mayor,
anybody?
Move to adopt the ordinance approving a zone map amendment from the R4 7500 residential to the CC1 central commercial zone located at 34 West, 100 North.
I have a motion by Councilman Taylor. Do I have a
Second.
second? Second by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton? Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Okay, motion is approved. Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 3, review and action on an engineering service agreement contract for the placement of high-density mineral bond as part of the pavement rehabilitation project. Scott, I'm going to have you come forward. This is stuff that gets city council members very excited when we start hearing about road projects and improving our roads.
I get excited about pavement too. I mean, it's really about the only thing more fun than it is sewer plants. So, but it's good because I'm a little confused tonight. I heard about corrals and I didn't see any horses. Heard about plaque and I didn't see any dentists. So, I'm struggling tonight, but I'll do my best. I know. Well, wow. I'll let that go. This, Mr. Mayor, this item before you and the council tonight is awarding the high-density mineral bond contract. It's part of the work that we like to make sure that we're doing each year. It's been done for the last couple of years. It's known quite often by its brand name, which I'm trying to get away from, as HA5. People have heard of HA5. It's a great treatment, but it's kind of like using the word gelatin instead of Jell-O or tissue instead of Kleenex, because there are other companies. HA5 is a proprietary name. This is, in fact, who did win this bid. It's Holbrook Asphalt, which is the HA of HA5, and so they are very much experts in it. We feel this is the right thing to do. This is awarding a 3-year contract to them to allow us to go to them each year as budget funds are available. So it would not necessarily be funded for 3 years. It's at the will of the council over the next couple of years. But this gets us going for this year. That is correct.
Any other questions?
Just curious, is there such a thing as low-density mineral bond, or
There is
called
not.
gravel?
There's not. High-density mineral bond is actually the term used in the specifications for American Public Works Associations, APWA, and so that's the term. It's a good generic term for the kind of pavement, this kind of pavement treatment that really fits certain situations on certain roads within the city. Roads that are not too far gone, that aren't cracked up to where you've got to do something more substantial, but it is a more substantial treatment than if you're trying to keep a good road good. It's more than just maintenance, like a fog seal. It's more than that, but a lot less than a full-depth reclamation or a reconstruction.
And I hear that this is usually used in the first 10 years of the road, and that extends the life an extra 5 years? Do I have that math right?
It can. There's so many factors that come into play that it can be. That's a lot of the, I guess, the literature seems to show that, but there's also lots of cases where it's demonstrated as lasting a lot longer than that. So it depends. I think the experience within the city has been that it's getting at least that.
That was what I was going to ask. I know we talked about this before, and you were quite new at the time. Do you have examples now of places where this has been put in place in the city?
We have 700 East by Evergreen Park, going north and south is where we used it.
Thank you, Councilman.
No, I think 300 North was a micro resurfacing is what was done.
I'm grateful for Phone a Friend. That is the lifeline. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I do have a question. I appreciate here that you did a bidding process. I know that takes work and effort. I'm curious to know what parameters you used to pick. Was it price? Was it the quality of their work? Or
Well, and this one, and I want to make sure that you don't feel misled or anything. We did only get one bid on this. So, and it was Holbrook Asphalt. So, and that can happen sometimes. We bid it clearly as a high-density mineral bond so that it fit the APWA specs. And we made sure that we looked at our bid package very carefully so that it allowed anybody who can provide this kind of thing to bid on it. We did only receive one bid. It's a relatively specific, but it's also because it is an APWA spec, because it does open it up, it's definitely not proprietary, which we felt was important. That we did not want to just say, you get it. We wanted to help. I hate to use the term keep them honest because I don't want to imply that there's been anything but honesty, but it's just, it opens it up. It allows for competition. And it turns out in this case there wasn't one. But in this case we would generally award on low bid had there been more than one bidder, unless there was something in somebody's bid that really jumped out as a reason why we would throw out the low bid.
So, a couple of follow-up questions. Is it just that there are not a lot of other contractors providing this specific program? Or is this one of those programs we had a problem with years ago where it was so small that nobody wanted to do it? Or is there some other reason? And then the follow-up question is, if I can word this right, did this come in, I think I saw per square foot, if I understood it right. Did that come in at about what you thought it should be bid at?
Maybe let me answer the second question first, because that's probably a little bit easier. It was actually a little bit lower than what we had thought it would be, so that was the good news.
Can we take that off the public record? Yeah. We don't want people to know that.
You know, and typically we like to estimate high and get it low. So that's it's one of the important parts of competition, really having competition. This is, I mean, a lot of the history with this, and David maybe can chime in if there's something he cares to add to this, but this type of treatment did start off as a proprietary treatment. There was no APWA spec. It was something that I want to say was essentially invented by this contractor, but it's had good results. So they ran into, I actually spoke with them months ago and kind of got a lot of this history and some training on it. And they ran into the same thing that was my concern. My first words out of my mouth to them were, I appreciate this wonderful product that you've given, but in public bidding, I can't really go to a council or the taxpayers and say, we want you to pick this proprietary product that they're the only person that makes it and can make it. So they had said that they had experienced that a lot in public bidding, and so they worked closely with APWA, with other different trade agencies, if you will, and the agencies is not the right word, but organizations, professional organizations like APWA, and developed a spec that was generic that others could do it. And in other places where there are bigger jobs, there are other companies that can and do provide it. It just, probably this wasn't, big enough that some of those other places involved, but it's still a relatively new thing that's like kind of starting to branch out as other people are seeing the benefits of this type of treatment. And I imagine in the future we'll see more companies.
You,
They are. They are. They are in quite a few other states as well.
you mentioned relatively new, so how tried is it? How proven is it?
It's relatively new, I guess. If it's maybe like I'm relatively bald. I don't know, but it's relatively young. I suppose that's true too. It's been around for enough years that I think we've got a pretty good handle that we can see places where it has succeeded or failed and why. What's really a lot more new is not so much the treatment, but the fact that now there's an APWA specification that opens it up, that allows public agencies like ours to bid and open it up. That's relatively new, and I mean, please don't hold me to this, but I believe within the last year or two. So that's a differentiation there.
I'm ready to move forward on a motion
I'm
to
ready.
approve the contract as presented and authorize the city administrator to enter the contract with Holbrook Asphalt Company, LLC.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Shelton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Taylor. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right. Action item number 4 is a review and action on a resolution adopting the 2018 fireworks If there's any questions that from the packet that are unanswered to you, this is, if I could paraphrase, we can invite the chief up. It's basically very similar to last year as far as where you can light off the larger aerials. We are adhering in Section B to state law, where it has a shorter window of lighting off fireworks from the 2nd through the 5th and the 22nd through the 25th. That was a new change in state law this year.
Yeah.
Anything you can add to this, Chief?
That's really, you hit it on the head. That's really the only change from last year is the allowable window. That shrank by 3 days on both ends. And then the time frame is 11 p.m. other than on the 4th and 24th, and that's allowed till midnight. So, but the city parks and all that stayed the same. We wanted to give the citizens an option, so we kind of picked parks, strategically in the city that, the best we could with, not a lot of fuel other than Art Dye this year. So we're concerned about that one, but we feel we got a handle on it. So
They seem to be well placed, I thought.
Yeah.
The only question I have is, did we get much in the way of complaints last year?
Actually,
that there were not enough places.
no, we actually got a lot of comments on this
Good
plan,
comments.
allowing people to have access to these parks instead of saying none at all.
And there was enough room for everybody that really wanted to do it,
and thank goodness there was no problems. So the crews were obviously monitoring those, but so yeah, it was actually commented that it was a good meet in the middle ground for the city to do this. So.
Real quick, Chief, the only comments I had back from last year is people were kind of surprised Art Dye Park was allowed to have it. Looks like when you look like Evergreen Park, it's fully developed around. You're looking at
Right.
asphalt roofs, asphalt, green grass.
A lot less fuel there.
Used to be green grass at Evergreen, but
We felt Art Dye was okay because, we had talked to Derek and they mow the grass, cut down the fuel. So that helps, and then we always send crews up on watch. But we felt like Art Dye was, acceptable because it was like a big central location for everyone to use. So.
Okay.
Mayor, I move to approve the resolution adopting the 2018 fireworks restrictions.
Thank you for that motion, Councilmember Carroll. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Barnes. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor. Aye. Thank you. Action item number 5A, review and action on the final plat for the Walnut Court Plan B, consisting of 2 lots located at 350 West, 400 North, in the R2-75 residential zone. This came from with a negative recommendation from the Planning Commission. As I was reading through this material as well and learning about this from staff, I'm going to lean on Adam if the council has questions, or we'll have Adam come forward. Is the applicant here? You know, I thought, who are those people in the back after all the crowd left? So
I didn't know you could do this streaming. That's pretty cool.
yeah.
My wife's watching us back there. No kidding. I would too. What can I tell you about it? I can give you a little bit of background on the project. It's an interblock cottage development project. What we've done is we've actually are taking it slow. We've owned the property for almost 13 years. Is that right, Sand? About 13 years. We bought it. It had an old house on it. And we've kind of maintained it. We've got approval a few years ago to get the subdivision in. We worked on that for about a year and a half or so. We got the subdivision in about last year. We built up the first 2 homes in it. We've made it nice. I don't know, Wendell, can you show some of the homes in the property there? But what we're trying to do is just kind of make this a nice, pleasant area. What we've done is we put a sidewalk all the way around. This is the very first time the entire block has a sidewalk. The neighbors can kind of walk around the whole thing. So it's a good place. It's not fully developed yet. We just finalized, we'll be closing on our loans this week for the back 2 lots in the back there to finish up those. If you go back down to where those 2 houses are, go right there. There's a lot right next to this. It kind of looks blue, but it's really kind of a gray color. But there's a lot over there that we're going to be building those homes next to. We're just trying to make the whole area a nice place and build it right up. And so what I wanted to do if you can go back over to the very first one you have, that'd be great, Gwendolyn. What we're wanting to do, when we originally did this plat, we had the house designs all put together for the inner block as part of the code. We do that. But the front 2 lots, we didn't have the house designs for what's going on in there. It wasn't part of the code. We didn't know what it was. The engineer just kind of put it there. And part of the discussion we had with the city at the time and also with the engineer at the time is those lot lines, which we can change those at any point in time, given whatever we kind of can fit on the lots. We didn't know exactly how those would work. If you go back to, I don't know where it is on here, but it showed the original lighting that we had. Is that right, Wendell? The original plat? Yeah, sure. You see the line kind of comes in and cuts across lot 2, which kind of makes it difficult for building something on it. In addition, we have this building in the back, and the engineer put building to be removed, which was never the intention of the building to be removed. It actually fits in with all the codes to go in there. But what it does was we were going to modify the building to fit where the property line was. As I started working with the architect to design the duplexes up front to where they fit, we found that it would be better to move the property line over. And then I started looking at it and I said, well, there's a cinder block wall. That building's actually got a cinder block wall right in the middle of it. It's the way it was always designed. It was built before I had it. And I thought, if there's a way to keep that building, it's actually a nice little storage place for people to store stuff in, and I've stored stuff in there for years and whatnot. And I said, so I came and I talked with the city about it, and they said, yeah, we have this ability in the code. It allows for us to be able to have a structure like this that crosses the line as long as there's a 1-hour fire rating right through the middle of the building, or where that line is. And so I thought, well, if we I mean, one, we need to adjust the other line because it kind of cuts across it a lot too to fit the duplexes on. But if we can go through and allow for it to come through and bisect the building where that wall is, then it's a natural breaking point for everything, and it allows for, you know, the lot 1 people to be able to store stuff in, and lot 2 people to store stuff in, and it's a natural thing. So that's kind of the goal, the plan that I like to do. One, we need to move the lines around so that we can fit the duplexes on that we want to put on that look nice, that kind of complement the homes in the back and will be similar to what that is back there. And 2, it'd be nice to keep the structure there. Now the structure doesn't look beautiful. I mean, it's a cinder block building. But the intention of that is to, if you can go back to look at the homes, could you go over to one of those ones? You'll notice here how it has a white soffit around the outside here. What we're wanting to do is we'll put a white soffit around and we'll probably stucco the building so it looks more natural to all the other homes inside the building. We want this place to be a nice place. We actually plan on keeping the property and renting it. It's kind of been our plan. We've rented the house. It's been down there for years. We haven't had any problem. I was actually really surprised that the Planning Commission, thanks. The Planning Commission didn't approve or didn't like it. I'm not sure why. There wasn't anyone here to object to it at the time. I've gone back through all of the notes from the original time when we went through and brought this project to the city, and at no point in time did anyone complain or was concerned by the structure in the building at all. In fact, all of the things rested really with a couple of things. One was the traffic that kind of crosses over the railroad tracks in that area. They thought that by bringing more people into this area, that it would bring it would cause more traffic to go across the railroad tracks. And that's a concern that, you know, kind of everybody has in that area, and I don't know when that's going to be addressed. But it's kind of an irrelevant one to this one here because the density doesn't change. The density is the same as it is. But that was one of the main concerns. The other concern was, you know, parking on the street. You know, that kind of doesn't really affect this changing of the lot line at all on it. We've had people living in there. We've had more complaints from people around the neighborhood. I've had one of the neighbors I was talking to last night and came through, liked it. He's glad that we're, you know, slowly but surely building stuff up and making it a nicer place. But anyways, you know, that's kind of what we're looking for. I know that that building does encroach on the easement. It goes right. Can you go to the older home that's on the property?
It's that second picture.
Yeah. Right down the corner, it does cross into the easement. There's a 10-foot easement, 5 foot on one side, 5 foot on the other side. There's a 2-foot section of that building that goes into that easement. I know that encroaches in there. There is no utilities in there, and if the city preferred not, I will modify that section so it doesn't encroach into that easement. But I know that at the last meeting, the city engineer said that in past times when there's nothing in there, there's really no need. What they've done is they've allowed for what did you call it, Scott?
An encroachment agreement.
Thanks. An encroachment agreement, which allows for it to be in there, but knowing that, hey, if in the future there is something that has to go in through that section, you know, they can come through and modify it, and I'm fine with that too. I'm fine with even modifying the building to kind of take care of it, so it's not an issue to the city at all if that's the issue. Or, you know, if the city's willing to, great. An encroachment of easements is great. But I own the house there. I own the other homes up front. I plan on keeping them. I plan on keeping them long term. This is something that, you know, my wife and I have done for years, trying to build up and make this place a nice place. And we have a very vested interest in making this a good place. And so that's kind of what, you know, we're trying to do is one, fit the proper duplexes on there. And 2, I would like to keep that back section without having to cut it down and tear it apart if we can.
You own that older home that's in this picture is on the right, and then that one's around also.
It is.
So I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
And I don't even have a vote, but we had a unanimous decision by the Planning Commission.
Uh-huh.
How might you dispute that that it
Here-
wasn't even split, that it was unanimous.
It actually really surprised me by this, other than the fact that I know that when I went before everybody the very first time, I don't know, was it in 2013 or 14, Adam? That we went through this. We had a lot of people come up that were upset about the project in general. It had nothing to do with the shed. It had nothing to do with those front lots. It had everything to do with having density in the area. There was, and that's, and I understand that, but
But that didn't have a bearing on the planning commission, or do you think it did?
I think that that's what it
A
was.
couple
because
weeks ago.
I know that, who is the gentleman that sits right here?
It'd be John Wolfenden.
What was the last name? Wolfenden. I know that John Wolfenden is friends with some of the people in there, and he was the one who was most outspoken about it. And he said that there's been a lot of people coming to him, and that was originally on. There were a lot of people that didn't want this project. It had nothing, and I mean, I have the notes here. I'm happy to bring them up from the very first one on the 13th. And there's no one that's ever talked about it. In fact, no one's ever brought that up. It's never been a concern. No one has ever voiced a concern about the shed to me about it at any point in time. So I'm happy to show that to you if we need to. So I honestly I don't know. I know that when they talked about it, they talked about the encroachment encroachment in there. Is that correct? Into that easement was really the only concern that they had talked about.
There was a lot of discussion, but you can see the motion in the end. What they said was, because it was slated to be removed on the original plans, that's what they fell back on. So, I mean, there was a lot of back and forth, but in the end, the motion was, with the finding was that the original plat had the note, building to be removed, and that's where it came down, so.
And that certainly was not something that we were trying to say, hey, we're going to remove this and then we're going to keep it. It wasn't that. That was never my personal intention. The engineer put that on without me really realizing it, and I didn't really even think about that and see that, really pay attention to that. But if you look at the code, the building sits, even as it sits now, sits legally, other than I do have to modify a portion of it and take a portion of it away. The building could actually stay as it is now with just the one section, with removing a portion, a little section of it. And I really don't want to hurt anybody. I'm not trying to do that. What I'm trying to do is make it a nice place. And I can assure you it will look nice when I'm finished with it. You know, I showed you the homes that we've built on it. They're beautiful homes. You see the landscapes that are in there. We'll have something similar to that as we move forward. It'll be a beautiful place.
I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I'll just ask them both, and you can address them.
Okay.
I would imagine the Planning Commission, well, I shouldn't speculate, I guess. But generally speaking, we try not to have odd-shaped lots that are unusable, have portions that are unbuildable, and that don't make sense. And I can imagine, for me, that's kind of an issue. It makes it so that if you're ever selling the lot, it gives a portion that's not usable. Then my second one is actually a question, not a comment, and it is, if you own both of the lots, how come you can't just change the line but keep the accessory building the same and let people use it, like even if it's on the other lot?
Well, can you go back there? Would that be all right? To the plot that I have, kind of, the ones that kind of show the houses on it, the one that I've got that has the houses on it as well, to kind of show what it would look like. Yeah, the site plans, please, thanks. So this is how it will look with the homes on there. If you take the the other one as it cuts through, it kind of cuts through and it makes it very. It too is kind of an awkward angle, having a lot line that kind of angles through the property too. And so, but the part of the reason that we have it designed this way here is with it we have 12,001 feet and 12,000, I don't know, 16 or 17 on the other lot, which is the legal limits for those two duplex zones right there. And so, you know, I mean, it actually works out fairly nicely. It's really not unusable to people. It's not the whole, this actually makes it a better use, having this line. I don't know how else to explain it to you. I wish I could do better. Did I explain it to you at all?
I just struggle knowing how it makes it a better use, but
Well, having a straight line through the middle of the property works out great. Having it to where the shed works is fine. Even if we had to take it off, you still have this back section here that, is still usable. There's plenty of room there for grass or whatever else that could go there if you want to have it there as well. I mean, I don't know.
well, I'm just like imagine if you had like a fence doing that. That would be unusual.
In my house in Lehigh, when we first got married, we bought a home in Lehigh. And what happened is the lot came like this. And so this whole corner became completely unusable. I couldn't put a shed there. I couldn't play soccer there. I couldn't put a swing set there. I couldn't do any of that there. Had they gone through and made it more of a square like this, here, anybody in the future who doesn't like that shed could take it down. They could put grass in. They could put a swing set there. They could put, even a garden area right there. It actually opens it up rather than having a slatted line with basically what you've got as a wedge like that makes it difficult to kind of go in before. If you look at the other side, it actually is a wedge. Does that make sense?
One of the things that Councilor Carroll and I are looking at,
Sure.
being able to take that center line and just bringing it down to meet that, is that the south lot line or the?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so up on the screen right here, just bringing that line straight down, that center divider line, just straight down.
Oh, I would be happy to do that, but I think that the city would have to have a variance because, originally the zone was for 7,500 square foot here, but they changed it. I don't know when it was. It was after I bought the property, but before I had submitted plans to change it. But they changed it to the square footage of the lots need to be a certain size. For a duplex. So that one wouldn't work for that.
Is that because it's duplexes?
It is because it's duplexes. It does, that's correct.
If they were single homes,
It was single homes that would do that, is right.
it would still be 12.5.
Well,
Would it be
I
7.5 or something?
I think it's 7. Was it 7.5 or did they change that one too?
So single-family homes in this area would be 7,500 square feet. A twin home lot needs to be 12,000 square feet. But that happened before Mr. Wiley came in with the subdivision. So when this was
Before it was like
subdivided,
9,000 square feet, I think is what it was. Is that right? Or was it 9,500?
twin home, it's been 12 since yeah, it's been 12 for quite a while. And the previous plat was, engineered.
Yeah, absolutely. The previous plat and the way that they're done now is they're both 12,000 square feet, give or take a few feet is really all it is. It's not a lot.
All right, council, where do you want to go with this? Would entertain a motion if there's any other questions, if you unresolved.
I guess I just take a look at it, going back to it. Is there anything that this violates the code by doing? I mean, is everything he's asking for in our code and legal and able to be done?
The building, yeah, it would have to be brought up to code to do it, but there is a provision that you can have an accessory structure on a property line, but it's got to meet building and fire requirements. They'd have to show that that's been done. Again, the Planning Commission just went back to, well, on your original plans, which was approved, preliminary plan and a final plan, you had notes that it was to be removed. We believed those notes, therefore we feel it should still be removed. Yes, it can be done. It has to be retrofitted and inspected and all of that, but they just felt that the original plan stood. So that's really where it came down to.
Adam, what about that provision that says section 17.8.306? Not having weirdly shaped elongations or atypical configurations.
I mean, that can come into play. That wasn't a finding they made. They just went back to the original approval, so.
If that's in there, we can't approve something if we figure that that's peculiar.
Again, that's subjective.
Yeah.
what they're doing with the current lot lines is they are still meeting the 12,000 square feet. They do need 12,000 square feet for a duplex lot. And so what they've done is they've taken the original lot line and reconfigured it to better, I guess you could say, distribute the area of the storage building. But the Planning Commission, again, was concerned, well, regardless, you know, on your original plans, even the one that's recorded says to be removed, so we feel that should still stand. So they didn't go off into the peculiar or whatever, they just felt the original approval still stood, and so that's why they recommended against it, so.
So Adam, you can help me out with this then, because, you know, just kind of coming with a practical sense with this. So as this currently sits, not from the original plan where it said the building would be removed, and whether, you know, Mr. Bybee?
Yeah, it is.
So Mr. Bybee said that was a mistake by his engineer, or he didn't know that, or whatever. Okay. But now we meet everything that's being asked for this particular zone and everything else. Are we literally digging in because it said that on the map beforehand and say, well, no, that's what it says before, and we're not going to change it, and that's it?
Well, I mean, that was their motion, and that's what we can go off of. Part of the discussion was one of the planning commissioners had a concern that with the building, so that right there, see that corner? That area that Vendeline's highlighting is unusable and would just be overgrown with weeds because you can't get there.
Right.
That was, I mean, it wasn't part of the motion, but that I do remember that came out as the discussion. So either way, I mean, it can be done. It does need to be brought up to code, and you have the Planning Commission's recommendation, and you can take it or change it.
Well, that's what I'm just trying to understand,
yeah.
having not been there. Well, no, they said, because if these other things were an issue, it should have been.
If the building weren't there, then this would have been approved just like the other one was approved. I mean, both lots meet the square
Right.
footage requirement.
But because the original plan had this building will be removed, that's where we're digging in and saying, no, we can't go forward because that's.
Well, they just felt the original plan didn't need to change. I mean, you can keep the lots configured the way they were. The building was noted to be removed. They didn't see a need to change the plat. Again, that was their recommendation. So.
One of the concerns that I was made aware of, and you may correct me if I misunderstood this, and I can't point to it, but I'm going to say it's that bottom left-hand corner where it says accessory building going up and down. Yeah, right down in there. They said it was so narrow that they didn't even feel that a lawnmower would be able to get through there. And I think this goes to that question of the weeds in the one area because it's so small and everything else. So that was just something that was brought to my attention.
That's part of that encroachment agreement. It's actually 3 feet. A lawnmower can fit through that without any problem. However, right now it's cemented. It's a cement driveway is all it is, or just a cemented area. We plan on putting a basketball court or a basketball thing out there for the neighbors. I mean, this is something that we're doing to put together. These are rental properties for us. This is kind of our investment, our long-term thing. So it's going to be a nice place. Already we're having kids going in that cul-de-sac playing. We'll have a basketball court standard out in that area too to kind of make that a nice place for everyone to be able to go in and do what they want to do.
Basketball court where on?
Well, not a court, but just one of those mobile hoops that goes out there, and that's an ideal place for it because there's you don't want to have weeds there or anything like
When
that.
you say out there, where are you talking that bottom part?
And that portion we're talking about, you can't.
This section right here is all
Yeah.
cemented right now.
The whole thing is cemented?
So there's no weeds. And if we were to, and if the city's kind enough to go ahead and give an encroachment agreement, we wouldn't take that section of it down, but if we need to, we'll do that. I mean, if it needs to be 5 feet because that's what it needs to be, that's what we'll do. I mean, we're happy to do that if that's what we need to do. But I mean, 3 feet in any way is definitely long enough for a lawnmower to go through, or a rototiller if someone in the future says, you know what, I want to put a garden back there because there's great sunlight back there. They could take out the concrete that's there, and they could do a garden back there and a rototiller, all those things to do it. And it would just be, it's really, to me, I just think this is a great thing for the neighborhood. So, and personally, I do like having it there. So.
Well, I would entertain a motion to move this forward or to the will of this council.
Mayor, I'm going to take a crack at a motion, and I don't, it is what it is. I'm just coming at this with my best knowledge, and I appreciate everything that's been expressed by the Planning Commission and going through with this, but this meets in every way, and it seems like, okay, we're holding up, we're worried about weeds, yet it's in concrete, and we're worried about, that building saying on a site plan that it would come down. I think if we've met everything, and clearly we have on this, the notes from the Planning Commission talk about Mr. Sensenbauer talking about that encroachment agreement and different things. It's an upgrade to what was there before in terms of the weeds and everything in our inner city, and I don't know. I feel like it's a good move. We've got in the notes the things that Mr. Bybee said he would do if we need to take that down and do those things. So this councilman moves to approve the final plat of the Walnut Court Plat B, consisting of 2 lots located at 350 West, 400 North, and to authorize the mayor and city council to sign the plat and accept the dedications.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion by Councilman Tater and a second by Councilman Shelton. Any discussion?
I generally go with property rights and let developers do, as long as they meet all the code, which you've done. My only concern is that building. If it were mine, I'd tear it down. I don't think it fits with the neighborhood, but it's your property, and I understand that. And I generally try and support the Planning Commission, and I'll tell you, I came here with the idea of denying this, supporting them because of the information I was given.
Okay. I'm going to go for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen?
Nay.
Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Half and half. I don't know what that is. I'm going to vote yes. Part of me says no, but I'm going to vote yes. And I'm gonna encourage you to tear it
Carroll?
down.
I'm voting yes, aye.
Councilmember Tater? Aye. Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys' help tonight.
Item number 6 is a review and action on a resolution indicating the city's intent to adjust the common boundary with Highland City in the vicinity of 1500 North and 100 East. I've asked our city administrator, David Bunker, to maybe just answer any questions or to lead out on some of the discussions we've had with Highland Cities.
Sure. So 9600 North is the address there in Highland, 1500 North in American Fork. There are several parcels here that are owned by the Robinson family, and their intention is to do a development here. And so this is in cooperation with Highland City. We have been working with them to make a common boundary here to annex or boundary adjust certain portions of that property into American Fork. There will be a small portion there that will also go into Highland City as well. And I think it's a great effort to work together with Highland City to make sure that the boundary's appropriate for this development. So there's been a lot of cooperation. Their city engineer and our city engineer have worked together very well on this. And I just wanted I asked the mayor if I could talk on this because Scott took my thunder on the HA5, or on high density mineral bond. But any questions on this?
You're saying Highland City's in total agreement?
Yeah, we've been working closely with Highland City on this. Yeah. Yep.
So the road will stay in Highland City. They will maintain the road, plow it, you name it. Put HA5 on it if they need to.
Well, Mayor, I move to approve the resolution indicating the city's intent to adjust the common boundary with Highland City in the vicinity of 1500 North and 100 East, and set the public hearing for August 14th, 2018.
Thank you for that motion, Councilman Carroll. Councilmember Carroll, do I have a second?
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion on the motion?
Just a real quick, I don't want to draw this out too long, but at that parcel 2 at the top there, it says not annexed. So is that going to go into Highland City then? Well, and there's a little bit above it and whatnot. I should know if we're going to clean that up eventually as well.
Yeah, so where it says not annexed, that's part of the road. There is a portion of that lot that is on the Highland side. That would be boundary adjusted into Highland. So everything along that curve, that portion that says not annexed, that would remain in Highland City. That would go to Highland.
So the little bit there where it says parcel 2 to be incorporated into Highland City,
That's the right of way for that roadway.
right. I'm just, sorry, confused by the slash lines going one way and the slash lines going the other way. You know, we've been asked to use maybe some colors or something like that, but I just want to make sure I got my slashes the right direction there. So all that's going to stay in Highland right there.
So parcel 2 will go into Highland. Parcel 1 on the west side
we'll
would
widen
come
that a
into
little bit to the
into American Fork.
I know, I got to get it right. Give me cross-eyed here. I'm just glad we're leaning right.
Okay. All right, I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll in a second. With a second by Councilmember Barnes. Any discussion? Did you second it? Yes, it was. It was seconded by Councilmember Christiansen for the record. I will call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor. Thank you. Item number 7, a review and action on a dark fiber lease agreement with, I don't know how do you say this word, what is it? Avantive. Avative LLC. And George is coming, George is coming out of the closet here.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, right? Okay, so this is a dark fiber customer that wants to just do a standard lease instead of doing a long-term IRU. They're not sure where their funding will be after 5 years, so they've decided to just do a standard lease. And this will bring some money in for the city for revenue for the next 5 years and potentially longer. They'll be putting customers on this fiber, so I'm sure that they'll be wanting to stay longer. They're also in our network operations center under a different agreement. And so they've met all the requirements to be able to do that. And now they've, we were hoping they would want to get on some fiber, and they finally did. So.
Mayor, I love the agreement and getting the money in, so I'll make a motion to approve the dark fiber lease agreement with Avative LLC.
Second.
You have a motion by Councilmember Shelton, a second by Councilman Taylor. Do I have any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion is approved. Item number 8 is review and action on an easement agreement with Rocky Mountain Power along 1120 North.
Sorry about that, Mayor. Should have probably said up front. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is an easement agreement we've been working on for a while with Rocky Mountain Power. 1120 North, it's primarily to serve the Lakeview Farm subdivision and just a couple things they're working on in that area. So this has been reviewed by us in engineering thoroughly, extensively, several times, twice over. And we made sure that we worked closely with Sherilyn, who reviewed it closely as well, to make sure the city is really adequately protected. So in the unlikely event that we have to move that road, widen that road, do anything with that road that goes into this easement, they'll be moving it on their nickel and not on the taxpayers' nickels. So I recommend approval.
Mayor, I move to approve the right-of-way easement agreement with Rocky Mountain Power as presented.
Thank you for that motion, Councilman Taylor.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion?
Quick
What-
question. My question is just, this is not in the road. It's outside of the road right away?
That is correct. So pavement's not going to be torn up or anything. It's on the north side. Outside, I'm pretty sure it's almost all outside the sidewalk, in fact. So the road won't be disturbed at all, and so.
Okay. Do you have a question, Councilman?
Just out of curiosity, in the contract, it says for value received. I wondered what dollar amount that was we're going to receive on this easement.
See, I need the phone a friend thing again. I know that's standard language that's put in a lot of the easements. I don't remember what it is. I think
guess
it's
my
a
question is,
nominal
are we
amount.
Selling that portion to them then? Usually we're purchasing right away and things of that nature. I just didn't know if that, you know, with this agreement, are we going to be selling that right away is what it looks like. But I'd love to know what the value is that we're receiving.
I don't know, Tim, if you can help me, I'm sorry. I don't know if you can or not, but I think that's standard language that it was just in there with, I'm not sure we received anything for it.
In order for the contract to be binding, there needs to be consideration. Consideration could be anything, even a nominal value that's exchanged between the parties. The question is was there a negotiation with Rocky Mountain Power that they would purchase the easement?
No.
So we're just giving this to them?
Correct.
Okay.
So is that not a binding agreement then?
The promises contained in it would be binding because essentially what they're agreeing to do is be bound by these terms, and we're giving them permission. So that's the exchange essentially under the terms. But if you wanted to add, like in a deed for $10 or something like that, if you wish to have the consideration more.
It's not a
spelled out
huge
more
legal
clearly.
thing, but I just would like to know what we're getting value for.
And Commissioner Shelton, or Councilor Shelton, like you say, there wasn't necessarily a dollar amount. I don't believe we normally do that with these. I don't know, and maybe if I'm wrong or we should, I mean, a discussion, but I do know that we, again, discussed extensively that this is an area that right now is in the right-of-way, or on city property, I should say, that is in city property that will allow them to do that, but if it has to be moved for whatever reason, they have to move it on their nickel. So the city's not getting any harm, I guess, from it, I would say. But there really isn't any other consideration or payment that we've negotiated in it.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, do we have a second? Okay. Sorry, it's been a long day. So I have a motion and a second. I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor. Aye. Okay, item number 9, motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion? Motion by Councilman Taylor, seconded by Councilmember Barnes. All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, we are adjourned.